All right, what's up guys? In today's video, I'm going to tell you after trying just about everything, how I was eventually able to finally get lean. Now, it seemed like for years I was trying so many different things to try and get the physique that I always wanted, but I just couldn't get past the hurdles. It was always rebound eating or yo-yo dieting, and it just seemed like there was so much conflicting information online. But finally, after many trials and errors, I was able to learn that the best diet to stick to is really just the one that implements a few key principles. Just a few very simple things that I learned along the way that was finally able to completely transform my physique. And in today's video, I'm going to tell you exactly how you can also implement those simple steps into your life to also completely change your physique, even if you're just a normal guy like myself. All right, guys, and before we jump into it, I do just want to show you this is what I used to look like. You can see I just had a pretty average physique. I was kind of overweight, didn't really have a whole lot of muscle mass, and just didn't feel super confident about how I looked. I like to show this in all of my videos because I just want you to know that the transformation that you might be looking for, going from being a little bit overweight and out of shape and just a normal guy to having a really great physique, actually isn't unattainable. It's actually totally attainable for everybody. Not just guys who have great genetics, not just super athletes, but literally the average guy can totally get jacked and lean. And I'm going to tell you exactly how you can do it in this video. And through the very basic principles that I'm about to share with you, I was able to completely transform my body. You can see I was able to lose quite a bit of body fat, get pretty shredded, and gain quite a bit of muscle mass too. And like I said, guys, if I can do it, anyone can do it. All right, so there's going to be three main things that we're going to cover today, pretty much like the main pillars that I used to completely change my body. And if you also do the same stuff, then you'll also change your body in a pretty major way. First thing we're going to talk about is diet. Diet is really the most important way to getting lean and getting jacked. And the main principle that I have learned through several years of dieting and messing up and doing some things right, but then rebounding and just trying just about everything out there, I have learned that the main important thing to do is to avoid processed foods. I think that avoiding processed foods and cutting processed foods out of your diet will fix just about 80% of all the problems just doing that alone. And so instead of the processed food, what we want to do is focus on clean foods. So this would be things like fruits, vegetables, animal protein. I like things like steak, ground beef, chicken, just kind of all the stuff that we already know that you should be eating, but just really a focus on high quality, high protein foods. And the biggest recommendation that I have would just be to find what you actually like and just eat a bunch of that. I think when people think of going on a diet, they think of eating all this stuff that they don't like. They think of having to choke down spinach or just things that are gross. But if you don't like spinach, if you don't like a certain food, then don't eat that food. If ultimately you don't like what you're doing, you're not going to be able to sustain it. So if you're doing a diet that you absolutely hate, you're not going to be able to continue doing that. And what we want to do is build a sustainable thing that you'll be able to continue, not just to get lean, but also stay lean in the future too. Just find the healthy foods. Think of the healthy foods that you genuinely enjoy. For me, I love fruit. So I love blueberries, bananas, strawberries, that kind of stuff. So I eat a ton of fruit, and I love steak and ground beef. So I eat a ton of steak and ground beef. I'm not choking down things that I hate, but I just eat a bunch of the stuff that I know is good for you, number one, and number two, that I genuinely enjoy eating. That allows me to make sure that I'm eating healthy stuff, but also make sure that I actually enjoy it and I can sustain eating that way. And the reason why I say to just focus on cutting out the processed foods and replacing them with clean foods is just because, in my opinion, it's way harder to be overweight and unhealthy if you're only eating clean foods. I think you'd be very hard pressed to find a person who is like morbidly obese and super overweight who only eats clean. At the end of the day, we all know that the reason why people are super overweight is because they just eat a bunch of junk and processed foods. And at the end of the day, the diet is not just one big decision. It's not just like this huge, motivated decision where, okay, now is the time. This is how I used to think about it. I'm like, okay, now is the time that I'm going to do it. I am changing my life. And that might be a very, inspirational, motivational moment. But at the end of the day, changing your diet is not just one big decision. It's not just a switch that you flip, but it's daily micro decisions. This is what you need to be prepared for, is that changing your diet is just going to be a bunch of small decisions that you make throughout your daily life. It's going to be things that don't actually seem like that big of a deal, but that compound over time. And, if you've ever read the book, The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, you know that at the end of the day, what really causes improvement, what really leads to quantum leap forward, is not just one big, macro decision, but it's lots of small things that add up over time and compound. It's the compound effect. The next thing we're going to talk about is calorie deficit. So calorie deficit, biologically speaking, is the actual way that you lose body fat. What a calorie deficit means that you consume less energy than what you expend. Therefore, that extra energy that you've expended, that you did not consume, your body then gets from stored fat. Literally, that's how you burn off fat, because your body uses stored fat as the energy that it needs that you didn't put into it. And so what I'd recommend is start thinking about calorie deficits once you're comfortable with switching to an unprocessed diet. Then you can start calorie tracking. I would say that if you're still eating a bunch of junk food and processed food, worry about just eliminating the processed food and junk food and switching to a clean diet. Then you can start thinking about a calorie deficit. So once we've gotten comfortable with switching to a clean diet, then we want to start thinking about an actual deficit. And I would say a sustainable calorie deficit is your maintenance calories minus 250 to 500 calories. So you can go to websites. The one that I use is just maintenance calorie calculator. It'll ask you a couple questions like your age, your height, your weight. It'll ask you for your activity level, and then it'll tell you what your maintenance calories are. And just to give you an example, let's say that your maintenance calories is 2,500. Well, you can subtract 250 from that, and that would give you 2,250 calories. That would be your new calorie deficit goal. You can actually calculate how much weight you want to lose. Now, I don't really recommend going more than 500 calorie deficit, because at the end of the day, we want this to be something that is sustainable. If you get beyond 500, in my opinion, especially if you're a beginner, it gets to be a lot more difficult. Your hunger signaling gets harder, your depletion is a lot more noticeable. So again, I think the sweet spot is anywhere from 250 to 500. At a 250 calorie deficit, you can expect to lose about a half pound of fat per week. At 500 calorie deficit, you can expect to lose about 1 pound of fat per week. And obviously those deficits are daily deficits. So what you can do is just determine your weight goal, and then you can do some quick math to basically find out, based on whether you're doing 250 calorie deficit or 500 calorie deficit, how long it's going to take you to get to your goal weight. And then just remember that a deficit is only a temporary period of time. That was a big thing that I had to think about, because towards the end of my cut, it would get difficult, and I would get into this kind of like loop, this thought loop of thinking, man, this is really tough. It seems like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. But I think starting a cut with the light at the end of the tunnel mindset, knowing that it's only a temporary period of time that you're going to have to be in a deficit, makes it a lot easier to sustain and accomplish and just get through that period of time. All right, guys. And then the last thing we're going to talk about today that I believe is super crucial is weightlifting. I've heard a lot of beginners that will think that if you want to lose weight, you just need to do a bunch of cardio, right? How many times do you hear, oh, I need to drop 10 pounds, so I've been just running on the treadmill? In my opinion, this is the exact wrong way to do it. I'm not saying that cardio is bad or anything, but our goal during a weight loss period should be to preserve as much muscle as possible, or even gain muscle. And yes, it is possible to actually gain muscle while losing body fat, depending on where you're at in your weightlifting journey. The idea that we just need to hop on the treadmill and prioritize cardio over weights, I think that is the exact opposite way of thinking about it that you should. The right way of thinking about it, in my opinion, from just what I've learned over several years, is a generally active lifestyle, meaning just someone who is moving around, is not just super sedentary all day, plus dieting, being in a calorie deficit, will take care of the weight loss. That is what's going to lose the body fat. But in terms of activity and in terms of dedicated exercise, we want to prioritize weight training over dedicated cardio. So I think a really great way to think about this is prioritize the weights. Cardio isn't bad. If you want to do cardio after the weights, that's fine. But prioritize the weights. Get in the gym about 3 to 5 times a week. You only need about 45 minutes per session, really. And then the way that I like to just get a healthy amount of cardio is I just get 10,000 steps a day. I think that's like a great way to make sure that you're still getting your cardio and make sure you're still living a generally active lifestyle, but really still prioritizing weight training to make sure that we are preserving or even building muscle during this fat loss phase. Now, at this point, a lot of times people will ask me, okay, so when I go to the gym, like what exercises should I do? What should my split look like? Where do I start? If you're interested in that, I actually just wrote an entire book called The Aesthetic Protocol. The Aesthetic Protocol, the whole reason I wrote this book, I spent a lot of time on it. It's the price of a couple cups of coffee, but I just wanted to provide all the specifics that you need to know, literally everything that I know to completely transform your body, everything that I've learned over the last several years of weightlifting and dieting, just put into one easy, simple book. And so if you want to go check that out, that's in the description down below. But anyways, thanks for watching. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, guys, because I have a goal of getting to 1,000 subscribers by the end of this month. We're almost there. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. But anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.